how can I not manage this situation? People who look after their dementing husband, wife, parent, why couldn't I do it? I realised that, yes, of course I could do the physical stuff. I could give mum her meds every day. I could cook for her. I could take her to appointments. That's what I've been doing anyway for 7 years. But it reached a point with the dementia where if I went somewhere, I didn't know if she'd wander. I didn't know if she'd fall over. I didn't know how to keep her safe, actually safe.
Kerry Milligan, welcome. Jo and I are
Thank
so
you.
looking forward to our conversation with you today.
Thank you, me too.
Kerry, to kick us off, what's one moment that changed for you dramatically?
When my mother came and lived with me.
So tell us a bit about that. When was that, and what was the major changes that you found?
In my family, there's 3 of us. There's mum, me and my daughter Isabel. And we've always lived very close to each other, within walking distance actually. Isabel got married, had a baby and moved to a suburb further away. Mum and I used to drive down to where Isabel lived. Every day I would go after work, pick up mum, and we'd go down and help her with the baby. And I realised that I was living in the family home, which was a big old Edwardian house with rotting boards and filled up gutters with weeds. And I would lie awake at night and worry about how am I going to manage all of this. And when I was making these regular trips to where Isabel lived, I thought, I should just move closer to where she is. It doesn't make sense. So I bought an apartment, never looked back at buying an apartment. It's fabulous, especially for a single woman. And it was big enough to accommodate mum. Mum at this point was probably in her mid-80s. She was starting to get a bit frail. And so I was trying to talk her into coming and living with me. She didn't want to lose her independence. She thought we might not get along. Well, that's not possible. We always got along. And then mum got pneumonia and had to go into hospital. I said, well, after you discharged mum, you'll have to come here and I'll look after you. Look, you've got your own bedroom, you've got your own ensuite, you've got your sitting room with your TV. It'll be like you've got an apartment here. When I come in, I will knock on the door like I would at your front door, and you can say, go away or come in. So she reluctantly agreed and, of course, absolutely loved it. 10 years later, she was still living with me. But, also we had an agreement that if either of us brought home a fancy man, that we'd leave a note on the front door, so we'd be very quiet and creep around. I was the one that brought home the fancy man, not mum. So she became more and more frail. Eventually, after about 7.5 years, she was diagnosed with dementia. I knew that I couldn't keep her safe anymore. I had to find support. I rang the Carer Gateway, which is a federally funded organisation that looks after carers, and they put me in touch with an organisation called Violet, and Violet have been amazing and so supportive. They helped me with counselling. They helped me with mum's will because her old will wasn't relevant any longer, doing an advanced care directive, power of attorney, all those really important things that you need to organise when you're looking after an old person. But they also, with the advice from the geriatrician, said you need to be looking at alternative care for your mum. That was my biggest fear, and that was my biggest guilt, was putting mum into care. I had this awful dilemma with my emotional brain and my rational brain. My emotional brain said, you're betraying your mother, you're letting her down, she'll never forgive you. In her advanced care directive, she says she never wants to go into aged care. And for me, the advanced care directive is a legal document, so how am I going to do that if she said she doesn't want it? Violet were amazing. Eventually, with their help, I found a suitable aged care place nearby. It's only a 10-minute walk from me and a 5-minute walk from Isabel, my daughter. So mum went into care, and the biggest regret of my life, I'm a very tenacious person. I persevere. I never give up. That's why I was married for 27 years. I don't give up. But I had to give up on mum, and I had to let somebody else take over and look after her. And I would visit her every day for the first few months, and then I realised that my brother would come and visit her, and he'd say to her, So when did you last see Kerry? And she said, oh, I don't know. She hasn't been to see me for weeks. And of course, I realised that she doesn't remember when I've been to see her. So I don't need to come in every day. Between Isabel and I, we were there probably every second or third day. We would take one of the grandchildren with us. We would take the dog with us because the dog, I've got an Italian greyhound, and the dog used to sleep with Mum every night. So they know each other, they smell each other from a distance. I did that because when you're with somebody with dementia, it's really difficult to have a conversation. I would take a prop. It would be a child or a dog. She was very happy for half an hour, then she got tired and she needed to rest, so we'd leave. The biggest thing in my life, that's the most relevant to where I am now, the fact that I looked after my mother for 7.5 years.
Obviously, from what you said, it seemed like it was a fairly easy decision to have her come live with you. This is just what we're going to do.
Yeah.
But I'm interested in that point in time where you could no longer care for her. You mentioned that was something that was very difficult. Your mum didn't want to go into care. Talk to us a little bit more about the feelings that really compounded that sense of not being able to do that with knowing that your mum didn't want it.
I've been a teacher for over 40 years, retired now, and teachers have an innate pragmatism, very practical people. We're solving problems all day, every day. We're managing 25 humans plus, if you're a secondary teacher, every day. We know how to manage people. I thought that was who I was. I thought, how can I not manage this situation? People do it. You hear stories about people who look after their dementing husband, wife, parent. Why couldn't I do it? I'm very capable. And then through the Violet Initiative with the counselling, I realised that, yes, of course I could do the physical stuff. I could give Mum her meds every day. I could cook for her. I could take her to appointments. That's what I've been doing anyway for 7 years. But it reached a point with the dementia where if I went somewhere, I didn't know if she'd wander. I didn't know if she'd fall over. I didn't know how to keep her safe, actually safe. Otherwise, I'd have to be with her 24 hours a day. And that wasn't realistic. And she wouldn't have wanted that, and I didn't want that. So I was so relieved that the place I found for Mum was wonderful. My mother was a very compliant, submissive woman, which is very typical of women of her generation. She was no trouble. Don't make a fuss. I'm okay. Everything will be all right. Yes, I'm standing at your bedroom door bleeding because I've got a UTI I haven't told you about for a week. Where she was, they had nurses 24 hours a day. And if there were any concerns, they would ring me and we would talk it through, and I'd give, because I had power of attorney, I'd give permission for medication, for medical intervention. It was such a relief that I knew they knew what they were doing, and they were doing it with love and care. An incredible multiracial, multicultural staff with great respect and love for the elderly. They would, if anybody ever tells you we've got to stop immigration, well, our aged care system will fall apart. They're wonderful, wonderful, wonderful people.
Kerry, I'm hearing a lot in this that the pragmatic sense of being okay with it really came to the fore. So talk to us more about the emotional. What was sitting underneath that was causing you the distress?
Massive guilt.
Yeah.
Massive guilt, which I still feel, actually.
Yeah. Okay.
And I don't know if that will ever leave me. And certainly talking through Violet, you get to talk to other people who are part of the sandwich generation. Guilt is the prevailing emotion.
Where does that come from for you around your mum?
I was brought up a Methodist. My grandfather was a minister, and I sat in the front row of the church every Sunday and went to Sunday school. I was brought up in the 50s and 60s to be a good girl. And that good girl mantle that sits over your head like a little tiara or crown is such a burden. It is such a burden because you don't know how to advocate for yourself because you're always advocating for others. And it really gets you into a lot of trouble in your life. You end up making very bad decisions for yourself because you're always making decisions for other people.
How will you start to dismantle that? Because clearly you had great love for your mum. There's no question about that. And you had great care for her. But given that's been such a mantle, what do you do with that?
You try really hard to be naughty.
Is it working?
Well, it depends. I've always obeyed parking restrictions, always. I've only had a speeding ticket once in my life. I'm 72. I think I've probably only had a couple of parking tickets, and then I'm really annoyed with myself. Now I will sit in a car park for an hour, not in the car, but I'll go and do something, go out for dinner, and I'll say, this is my attempt today to be naughty. So far, I've been pretty lucky. I've got the luck of the Irish. My name is Kerry Milligan. But the other night, I got a $125 parking fine and I was so cross with myself. As I said to a friend who has been encouraging me to be naughty, think about how it balances out in the end, Kerry, because you've had all these free parks when you shouldn't have for this amount of time, and now you've got $125. All works out in the end.
Has that been your go-to for a while now? The good girl in 98% of things? Has this been recent, this naughtiness?
Yes, although my girlfriends would probably say not. They would probably say I've always had a bit of a larrikin streak. When I turned 50, they threw a dinner party for me and they said, now, Kerry, your motto should be elegance and dignity. And I said, I don't know how I'm going to do that. You'll have to help me with that one. And then I turned 60 and they said the same thing. You're not doing all that well with your elegance and dignity. And then I turned 70 and they said, they think they'll have to give up on me with elegance and dignity. It's not going to work.
Kerry, you mentioned that you had this counselling and this support, and they helped you to understand that, yes, physically, practically, you could care for your mum, but psychologically, the impact. Talk us through what was it that led you to realise that psychologically it wasn't something that was sustainable?
Violet is all about supporting the carer. So they're constantly there for you online, but also on the phone to talk you through the experience you're going through at any particular time. Their questions are always, how are you? Are you okay? And then depending on what you tell them about the situation that you're dealing with at the time, they will offer practical and compassionate alternative suggestions. They don't tell you what to do. When you're really stressed and anxious and upset, your brain just isn't working. You can't think logically. So they're like the calm, logical voice that makes you take a few deep breaths, and then the logical brain kicks in and you can actually hear what they're saying and you can make whatever decision suits you at the time. The forward planning too. What do you think is realistic if this happens to your mum, if she has a fall? One of the really important things I learnt through Violet when mum was in care was you don't have to send them to hospital when they're not well. And that was a real shock to me because mum trained as a nurse. She actually thought when she went into care that she was in hospital, and that actually made her feel secure. She said to Isabel and I feel safe here, because she knew people were looking after her. She progressively got more and more frail, continued to get a really bad UTI or a heart problem, especially through COVID. I would get a phone call from the nurse, Kerry, we're a bit worried about your mum. They would tell me whatever was happening. They would say to me, do you give us permission to call an ambulance? Through Violet, I learnt this, that mum was 96 years old. Now, did I want her to be waiting on a winter's night for the locum GP to first come and sign off on it, then wait for the ambulance to arrive, then be wheeled out on a gurney in an ambulance in the dead of night in winter, then go to whichever God knows hospital in Melbourne that they would ramp her into, wait in casualty. I've done it so many times with mum. All the staff at the local public hospital know me by name. If it's not mum, it's my daughter, it's my grandchildren, never me. It's always somebody else. Sit in ED for 4 to 5 to maybe overnight while they find a bed for her, and then have medical intervention, which actually isn't appropriate for a 96-year-old. Do you give a 96-year-old CPR? Absolutely not. It'll break her ribs. It'll probably kill her. No. So I learnt that supported me in making the right emotional and rational decisions. I actually realised that aged care legally had to do that. I was power of attorney. They had to ask for my permission. If I said no, and what I did was I said, no, I know that you can look after her in her bed, in her room, where she feels safe and secure. She knows you, she loves you, you love her. I know you will look after her. And intervening on that level was such a relief. It took so much emotional burden off my shoulders. It was amazing. It was such the best thing I ever learned.
Kerry, it's interesting, isn't it? Because we live in a world that everything is about saving life at any cost. What I think is really encouraging about what you're saying is the actual point of choice that you had. Is this the best for mum at this time, or is it not, rather than being driven by the whole viewpoint that we must do it? How did you cope with that emotionally? Because it's a big responsibility to take someone's well-being into your care. And what fears arose from that for you?
I wanted the best for my mum. My fear was that that would be a horrible experience for her and an unproductive experience for her. And then I had the massive fear of ringing my brothers saying, can you meet me at hospital? Mum's been admitted. We're going to have to make some decisions. And standing around in the corridor at 2 a.m. in the morning trying to convince my brothers that this kind of medical intervention is really not a good idea on a 96-year-old woman who's very frail with dementia, heart disease, lung disease. That 2 a.m. conversation in a hospital corridor was something that I knew I did not want to have and I was not going to have. That's where my tenacious determinism, my lioness, my tiger mum, I was determined to fight. I used all my emotional energy for what I felt, knowing my mother as well as I did, to fight for her the best possible way I could.
And do you sense that Violet helped at that occasion, that you wouldn't have done so without the permission to consider other factors?
It gave me the confidence. So I've always believed as a teacher that knowledge is power and that there is no wrong question. I'm an art teacher. I'm not a, academic. But I would say to the kids, there's no wrong question. Even if you think it's really silly, just put your hand up and ask it. I'll tell you yes or no, or I don't know, and I'll find out for you. So, yes, that's what Violet taught me. It taught me to have the confidence to make decisions. It taught me to ask questions and not feel stupid, especially around medical staff. They're busy, they're stressed. You don't want to be pressuring them. Violet gave me emotional support and practical support.
And Kerry, I want to go back to that pivotal point when you made that decision to put your mother in aged care, because I know a lot of people struggled very hard at that point. So they also stepped in and let you zoom out, because you were zoomed in on your mother's welfare and well-being, and there was guilt sitting on your shoulder. They shone a light on it wasn't sustainable for you, that you were constantly living in this worry and fear. Talk us a little bit more through that component.
They focus on the carer. They're all about self-care. They're all about burnout and where you draw the line and how we're not supposed to be doing this on our own. We're supposed to be getting help. Hopefully you can find a family member, a sibling that can help you and support you, and not just in the practical ways, but in saying things like, how about if I come and stay with mum for the weekend so you can go away with your fancy man? The burnout part is a really important part. I've got 4 girlfriends at the moment who are going through this, and they are practically living with their elderly parent 24/7. And they're exhausted. They're looking after grandchildren. They're driving their parent to appointments, to doctors. What Violet would say is, and I'm saying this now to my friends, is if you burn out, what they used to in the olden days call a nervous breakdown, then you're no use to anybody. You're no use to your mother or your father or your husband, because you're going to be out of it. You're going to be locked up in a loony bin or in hospital with a heart attack. I'm going to start ranting here. Women, we suffer from heart attacks and we don't know we're having them. And medical staff don't know we're having them because we downplay it. I'm okay. I've got to get mum to this appointment. I'm all right. Don't fuss. We've got to learn how to ask for help. And if we don't get it from our immediate family, which often happens, then you need to get it from another source like Violet or the Carer Gateway.
So on one hand, you've got the guilt that's been there from childhood. And
Yes.
then on the other hand, you've got someone like Violet saying, no, it's about you. Talk us through how did you navigate those two very strong forces and move forward?
Well, they work parallel. They're together. They don't separate unless you have it, which I have had. I had a total meltdown the other day while I was supposed to be chairing a Zoom meeting with 24 people in the waiting room. Oh, God, it was terrible. It was so embarrassing. You do have meltdowns when the emotional, irrational brain takes over. But then I just make a phone call and I get the support I need and I talk through it and advised it, don't worry, it's a one-off. It's all part of the guilt, grief process. And I realised that and I listened to it. When you get help like that, it's an objective voice. They really don't know me from Adam, but they've talked to a lot of other people in my position. They know how to talk gently and calmly and compassionately and bring you down and help you on the path to getting your rational brain back into gear. And acknowledging the guilt. Suffer it. It's all part of the grief process, because if you've got somebody you love with dementia, it's like the long goodbye. And you're already preparing yourself for the end. And for some unfortunate people, it can go on for years and years and years. And for me, it was 2.5 years. You have to sit with it because it's a natural human emotion.
I'm hearing from that your mum's no longer with us, Kerry. Yeah. My condolences and I'm sorry to hear that. It doesn't matter how old someone is, it does never take away the grief. Kerry, how did you get to the point where, knowing that your mum didn't want to go into care and you needing to be pragmatic and make those decisions because you as a carer couldn't sustain that, how did your mum react when she went into care and how was she with you?
You might say that I was very manipulative, but I had to convince mum that it was about me. Mm-hmm. So what I initially did, and again through the counselling, the counsellor advised me that I needed a break. You need to go away somewhere with your fancy man. You think about putting your mum into respite. So that was a good plan. So I said, I need to go away, mum, I need a holiday, but I don't want you to be on your own because I'd be so worried about you. And it's true, I wasn't lying. When I go away, that something will happen and I won't be here. And she said, oh, so-and-so can come and stay with me. And I'm thinking, well, they work full-time, so they won't be here. One of your brothers can come and stay. No, Mum, that won't work because they work and they won't be here 24 hours a day. How about we go and have a look at 2 places and you tell me which one that you would consider going into for 2 weeks while I go away. She said, well, okay, I'm happy to do that. So we went and visited 2 places close by that had been recommended to me by Violet. And she loved both of them. But there was one in particular that I loved that was a bit like a Riviera resort. And I've told my daughter Isabel that if I get to 80 and I'm not quite right in the head, you can book me in. She was happy to go in either of them. I booked her in for respite and she loved it. She absolutely loved it. She loved all the activities, the singing, the music, the yoga. She loved the staff. She even loved the food, which doesn't say much about my cooking, although that was nice food. She loved the happy hour every Friday night. And we could go, Isabel and I used to go with the kids, a glass of wine, a bowl of nibbles and some entertainment. And it was always great fun. And Mum was a people person like me. So she just loved being around people and she loved chatting. At that point, she hadn't gone fully into her dementia. She was still reasonably lucid. And then I came back from my holiday and I made the big mistake of bringing her home. Oh. And I didn't know, I didn't realise. And I was advised later on by the geriatrician, it's the worst thing you can do with somebody with dementia, is take them out of the secure, safe environment that they're in. I brought her home and she completely regressed. She just took to her bed and she wouldn't get out of bed. She wouldn't do anything. She stopped eating. It was awful. And I had to ring them up and say, it was within days, can I bring her back? Can you give me a bed? And they did.
Sounds
So
to me that the process that you used was great because it was a try before you buy for your mum, but she didn't know that. But in essence, that's what you were doing with her. Equally, she had an idea in her head about what it would be like, and it was nothing like that. To the contrary,
that's
it was
right,
really good.
because years and years and years ago, when my parents split up, my dad ran off with a barmaid, 25-year-old, and left mum homeless. Very common story. She got a job in an aged care place, and it was a privately run aged care, and it was horrible. She was a cleaner, and she saw the worst of the worst. And I think that was in her mind of what aged care was going to be like. And that's why it was so good that I could give her a trial. Initially, she thought she was in a hotel, and that's how I put it. I said, I'm having a holiday, Mum. You're going to go and have a holiday too. It's going to be like you're in a hotel. All your meals will be cooked. There'll be entertainment. There'll be wine. There'll be dancing. There'll be fun. And so that's how she saw it, and it was perfect.
Kerry, I'm going to move forward because I don't want to not talk about how you are now. Now that your mum has passed. It's obviously been a very big journey. How are you managing now?
As I have always done, I'm a very social person. So I see my friends as often as I can. I see my fancy man a couple of times a week. I listen to music a lot. I sing. I'm singing in a little group of women, a little ensemble. I do dance classes 2 or 3 times a week. I walk the dog on the beach. I swim in the pool. I live in a building that has a pool. And I'm very involved in my community. So I volunteer for various organisations. I'm a member of the local CWA, which is the most radical CWA in Victoria. I'm very proud to say. Don't tell them they're feminists. They would not be happy with that, but they are. I am on a committee called French Assist Melbourne, which is run by the French Consulate, which looks after French people who get into trouble in Melbourne. And believe it or not, there are so many bike accidents along Brunswick Street, Fitzroy, with French people not wearing a helmet. You wouldn't believe how many. I'm an ambassador for the School Public Education Foundation, which advocates for kids in public schools. And I'm on the Ad Standards Community Panel of Australia, which reviews the complaints about advertising. And I'm very involved politically, locally too. I live in Goldstone, and we were very lucky to have an amazing community independent representative called Zoe Daniel in our electorate for 3 years, and that was a big campaign, and I worked on that campaign as a volunteer. It was great fun.
Sounds like you've really created quite a life for yourself, Kerry, to support the loss of your mum. But those moments that you're sitting home on your own and you're reflecting on your mum's life, or those moments of grief where they just grab you without your knowing, how do you navigate those, and what does that do?
I try to avoid them, actually. Mum and Isabel and I, during COVID, wrote a book. We wrote a 3-way memoir. We were approached by a publisher and asked to do this. They said it's never been done before, a 3-way memoir about all the issues pertaining to women's lives seen through the lens of 3 generations. It's called Out of the Box. And it was because we had this profile on Gogglebox that we got the offer to do this. So it was a fabulous experience doing that with the 3 of us, but I can't look at that book and I can't listen to the audio book because it's in our voices, so it's Mum's voice. I can't look at photographs of Mum. I'm actually going to start crying. It's just too raw at the moment. So that's why I'm occupied in all these activities, so that I'm not sitting at home too much ruminating over it. I read a lot, and as I said, I listen to music, and as I said to you earlier in our conversation, I have been known to watch a little bit of trash TV like The Golden Bachelor.
Whatever works, Kerry, is what I say.
So, Kerry, does Violet also offer support for carers after their loved ones have passed?
Been having regular grief counselling. Yeah, it's been wonderful.
They encourage carers to seek that afterwards, which is important.
It is the mantra. You can't do this on your own. That's the constant reinforcement for people. I did a thing for their website, their Instagram, where I was actually using my teacher voice and saying, you can't do this on your own. You need to get support. And it's had so many views. It's been phenomenal because I'm actually saying what people need to hear and what nobody ever says to them. Something like 89% of carers in Australia are women, and they've had to give up their jobs and to do what they're doing. They're called the sandwich generation. I had 2 shoulder surgeries done in the last 5 years, and when I went to the surgeon, looking at the MRIs, looked at me and he said, "You're part of the sandwich generation." And I said, "What's that?" And he said, "I can see from the MRIs, you've been lifting prams, you've been lifting walkers, you've been lifting bikes, you've been lifting old people, you've buggered up your shoulders."
It's an interesting point you raise there about, why is it that we, and I think women in particular, I'm going to say that, feel that we have to do it on our own. Where does that come from? Or where does that come from you, Kerry? Why is it not okay to ask?
I blame Eve. No, seriously, I do.
Okay, tell us more.
Well, because I won the Scripture Prize in Year 8, I'm an authority, even though I was an atheist by the term 1 of Year 7. I was 11 when I became an atheist. I think we are conditioned into sacrificing ourselves and in a sort of almost masochistic way of punishing ourselves. When I was working at Monash Hospital in adolescent psychiatry, I was there for 25 years, and every morning we would have what medical staff call a handover. So the whole team, the multidisciplinary clinical team, sits in a room and we hear the 24-hour handover of the kids, each kid we're working with. And you can imagine, adolescent psychiatry, I heard the most horrendous, traumatic stories. I'm sitting there with my big teacher's diary every morning, and I've got my art pen, and I'm drawing pictures. And it was almost like Salvador Dali, the stream of consciousness coming out through the paintbrush. And I've got books and books and books now of drawings of dancing girls, very skinny, because I was working with anorexia a lot, skinny dancing girls in tutus on crucifixes. Now, read what you like into that, but I'm not a psychoanalyst, but it's all about, for me, and that's part of the reason why I'm a feminist, women don't stick up for themselves enough. I've been told in my life that I was selfish, and that was probably the most upsetting thing that was ever said to me in my life, because tell me I've got a fat bum, tell me whatever you want, but don't tell me I'm selfish, because I've never viewed myself as selfish. I never stood up for myself. I never advocated for myself. And one of the wonderful things about menopause, and I don't know if you are aware of that Instagram phenomena called the We Don't Care Club, started in America and we've now got an Australian representative. And it's about being perimenopause, menopausal and postmenopausal. And basically you reach a point in your life where you just don't care anymore. If you want to not shave under your arms, who cares? I don't care. I haven't shaved under my arms for 30, 40 years. I just don't care. If people think badly of me, well, that's their problem, because I know I'm okay. And that's what it's about. We don't say no enough as women. We're constantly accommodating everybody else's needs, but not our own, because we don't want to be accused of being selfish, because we don't think we are. And I would say out of all my friends, and I've got a lot of girlfriends in various aspects of my life, they're not selfish people. But maybe that's just my choice of friends.
You've made a really poignant point here. I don't know how well we stand in our own power, and that we can articulate what we need and what we want.
I think you're right about that. I think that, as I said earlier, that knowledge is power. We are very fortunate in Australia and other developed countries where education for women is considered to be a very important aspect of society and culture. We're educating women, we're giving them choices in their lives. And I must say, and it's very controversial when I say this, I know, but I must say I really admire young women who say they don't want to get married, they don't want all that ridiculous expense and fluffy dresses and stupid rubbish, and they don't want to have children. And I think, good for you. You've seen what having kids can do to you as a woman, And I love the fact that women are now making that choice. I think it's amazing. It's knowledge is power. And what happens when you educate women? They have less children. They're healthier. Their children are healthier. They can actually support themselves. If you think about my mother's generation who gave up working when she got married, and when her marriage fell apart, she had no source of income and she was homeless. You think about domestic violence now and all these women out there who are homeless, living in cars. It's all about knowledge. It's all about education. It's all about financial independence. It's really, really important. And that gives us our power. I knew when I got divorced, which was horrible, and I never want to go through anything like that again, I actually said to my girlfriends, I never want to see another penis again as long as I live. And they all laughed and said, oh, yeah, we don't believe you. It took me 5 years. When I got divorced, as much as it was the worst emotional experience I've ever been through, I knew I was going to be okay because I had a profession. I had a job and I could keep earning money to support myself. And I had good superannuation and I was going to be okay.
Kerry, it feels that whole journey is about you learning to stand in your own power. The decisions that you needed to make with your mum, that was you being able to stand in your own power, and that was intrinsic in what you needed to learn at this part of life.
And you know what was the catalyst for me? Because sometimes we get big shocks in our lives, don't we? And we go, what? When my husband left me, I went straight to my best friend that I studied through art school with, another teacher. I stood at her doorstep, I'll never forget it, and she opened the door and I was a mess. You know, I was crying, my eyes were all puffy and horrible. I told her and she looked at me. She'd known me since 1993 and she said, now I get the old Kerry back. And I just went, what? What are you saying? Where have I been? Where have I gone? And she said, before you got married, you were this amazing, vibrant, confident young woman. You were so much fun, and now over the 27 years of your marriage, you've reduced yourself. I actually shrunk. And she said, now I get you back.
Wow.
Jesus, that was like a slap over the chops for me. I thought, bloody hell, it was that bad.
Kerry, now it looks like from that point forward, as Anne mentioned, it has been a journey of reclaiming your power. When that thought, who said to you that you're selfish, that memory, now that you are standing more in your power, what do you do with that? What do you say back to that thought or that comment?
I think, good on you. Keep doing it. When we ended up on Gogglebox, which was just the funniest story, and I actually had the Australian public coming up to me in the street, mainly women, coming and saying, I love watching you on Gogglebox. You say all the things I think. You say all the things I want to say, and I'm not brave enough to say it. And it's really interesting, the way Gogglebox was set up was that we were in the lounge room, on the couch, drinking wine, and just the three of us together, Mum and Isabel and I, just watching TV and making comments. And I would say all these sarcastic, cutting, ridiculous things about what we were watching. And the producers seemed to like it, and the public certainly did. It was such a confirmation of who I was that I didn't have to be guarded. I didn't have to be careful about what I said because I might upset somebody. And yeah, I'm sure some of the things I did say on Gogglebox probably did upset some people. But I got so much really good positive feedback that I thought, yeah, I actually am enjoying being myself, even though I feel like I'm in the security of privacy in the lounge room. It's gone out there into the public domain and women are identifying with me. I must say, Mum was the oldest woman on Australian television.
Oh, wow.
And when she went into care and couldn't be on Gogglebox anymore, I became the oldest woman on Australian television, apart from Maggie Beer. Sorry, Maggie, but, you know, you were, but I was too. And it gave me such power because I thought I can be in this role a really good voice for a lot of women out there who feel invisible because they're older and they've got, you know, a few grey hairs, although I have had women come up in the street and say to me, where do you get your greys done? Because they're fantastic. And I have to say, they just happen naturally. I don't get them done. That they feel more confident in being themselves and not invisible as, women over 50 or menopausal women or whatever the social construct wants us to believe. What do they say? To keep the boot on the neck? Isn't that the phrase? I think it might be.
Thank you for sharing that really important moment in your life where it was really hard and you needed someone else to help you have your power. So I'm really so grateful that you have shared that story with us. And I know that someone who's going through that journey myself, I've really found a lot of encouragement and really some wise words of wisdom. Thank you so much for sharing that story with us and sharing who you are now and you standing in your power and helping other women. Given the journey and the experience you've shared with us, what would you tell your 10-year-old self?
I'd tell my 10-year-old self that you're too young to know anything, so just relax until you start your period and you're about 14. And then you need to start seriously thinking about what you want out of life. And knowledge is power. That's what I'd be saying to my 14-year-old self. You need to look after yourself. You can't look after anybody else unless you look after yourself first. And this is something I always used to tell Isabel when she was going through a crisis. Isabel, it's like when you're in the plane. You've got to put the mask on yourself first before you put it on your child. And that's a mantra that I've always followed. I would say knowledge is power. Never be afraid to ask a question or to ask for help.
Very wise words. And so what has been the greatest gift of your experience or this part of your journey?
As paradoxically as it might sound, divorce. A horrible experience I would never want to wish upon anybody. But when Mandy looked at me at her front door and said, now I get the old Kerry back, that was like a cattle prod up my ass. I just thought, oh my God, where have I been? That was a gift.
And then finally, to wrap up, Kerry, given your journey with your mother, what would be some tips for listeners?
Ask for help. Be aware that the family dynamics will change radically, that if you're the primary carer of your elderly parent, you will have other siblings who will resent that, will argue with you about that, will fight you about that. And that's why you need some support. So all the sibling rivalry, the jealousy, I'm the eldest and the only girl, so I'm the bossy older sister and they don't like it. What's right for you, the person you're caring for and for you, and you need support to carry that through.
Kerry, thank you so much for bringing such an important topic to our podcast. It's really important that we keep this conversation going.
Definitely.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate your time. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, that's our episode for today of What's Fear Got to Do with It. Thanks so much for your company. We hope you found it insightful and it left you with some helpful tips from our guests and some great points for you to reflect on. Don't forget to subscribe to us on Substack or follow us on your favourite platform and leave a review. We'd love to know your thoughts. Maybe you'd like to be a guest or you know someone who you would like to hear their story. Reach out to us on Insta at whatsfear_podcast or email us at info@whatsfear.com. All the guests' show notes are below. And until next time, from Jo and I, take care, stay curious and keep the conversation going.